Morning. And thank you, first of all, to Tim and Aaron and Sarah for organizing and coordinating such a terrific series. This has really been great. My name is Brian Wong, and I teach biology and biochemistry at Penn State Berks. And I'm gonna let my co-presenter introduce herself.
Morning, everyone. My name is Red Yuan. I'm the instruction designer at Penn State Berks campus. We are so excited to be here today to share our project with you. During our presentation, please feel free to leave your question or comment in the Q&A channel, and we will answer your question at the end of the presentation.
Now, before we actually talk to you about student designed assignments, I was hoping that you'd indulge me for a minute as I show off a couple of pieces of my kids' artwork. Now, I love my kids, but I'm not showing these paintings to brag or to even suggest that they have any significant talent. Because when I look at these paintings, I don't really focus on the colors or the brush strokes or even the subjects of the paintings, but rather on how they were put together. Because I know that the painting on the left was actually a paint by number project, and the painting on the right was done freehand. And so now I'm wondering, which activity do you prefer? And you guys in the audience can actually go ahead and you can respond to this poll by going to the website that that Red just put in the chat box. It's pollev.com/BrianWong676, or you can use your smartphone. Just text to 37607 and you text Brian Wong 676. That will join, and then it will let you answer, and you can put your response in after that. And now I'm letting the responses come in. You can see that we're pretty much, it looks like evenly split, actually more on paint by number by a little bit, which I find interesting, but we're pretty much, evenly split here. Thank you for responding. Let's see if I can go forward. That brings up another question for me, which is, why did you choose what you chose? So can you explain your preference? And so now I'm going to give you another chance to answer this poll. So basically you can type in actually a message here. Explain your preference. So why did you answer the way that you answered? Freedom. More fun. I'm not sure which one is more fun, but yeah, more fun allows more creativity. Sometimes detailed instructions are maybe more comforting. Yeah, it's intimidating to work on a blank canvas. Someone's more intuitive, able to be creative. These are great answers. I think in a way, students aren't really dissimilar at all from this audience. They may crave the freedom of wide open spaces or an open-ended question, but at the same time, they may need or they may want guidelines and structure or kind of specific options to help them to learn to use their time and their talents effectively. And so somewhat paradoxically, structure can be helpful to increase creativity. So thank you so much for all those great answers. I'm actually not going to clear the responses. I'm going to keep these. Thank you very much. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to let students design and build their own assignment, but to do so in a way that guides and encourages their creativity and ownership of the learning experience rather than overwhelming them. And so just to kind of give you a little bit of context, we first tried this project in an upper division laboratory course in the B&B major at Berks. And the students in this class are typically seniors. We tried this in spring 2019 first, and all of the students in that semester were getting ready to graduate. And that actually provided one of the prime motivators for the project. So we all know that having a class full of graduating seniors presents some really unique opportunities, but it also presents some challenges, not the least of which is trying to avoid that dreaded disease that, well, in spring 2020 would have been COVID-19, but in spring 2019, it was something that was much more common and pernicious. It is the disease of senioritis. So one of the reasons that we instituted this project was to try to maintain the students' interest in their studies throughout the entire semester until the day they graduated. I was also hoping that we would prepare them to learn in a setting beyond college. So they're leaving school. We want them to be able to learn without an instructor telling them exactly what, how, and why to do something. In addition, there's a couple of other goals that kind of dropped out of this project. First of all, students learn to communicate with not just scientific audiences, but non-disciplinary audiences as well. And one of the reasons that we're here today is that they actually enhanced their ability to use digital media that was kind of a natural extension of the project. So the basic idea behind a student designed assignment is that students design their assignment. So in this class, we are essentially telling them to tell the story of their lab work. In this semester, they spent about 12 weeks of the semester doing one single lab project. So it's an extended lab project, and we're asking them to tell the story of their laboratory work. And then we don't give them much prescription beyond that. It's really, now you decide how you're going to tell that story. Who are you telling it to, and for what purpose? So it feels like a blank canvas, but it's not completely blank. I mean, you know, we first introduce we first introduced the idea through what I call a meta assignment. It's an assignment about the assignment that the students were to design. So this meta assignment helps direct students to craft a proposal where they describe, first of all, what are they going to make? And then how do they think their project would be best evaluated? So what are, for them, what are the parameters of success? And then finally, the processes and timelines by which they're going to work. So to come up with a plan for how they're going to achieve this. Students are at first bewildered, but gradually they process the meta assignment and then they get started. So in this class, we allowed students to either choose a partner or to work alone, and there was a mix of those. They created detailed proposals then that went through multiple rounds of feedback and revision. So almost never did, I don't think there was one example of a student group or a student getting approval for the proposal immediately. So we went through multiple rounds of kind of feedback and refinement until they got to a point where, you know, I felt comfortable with what they were proposing. So it does give me, as an instructor, a measure of control over what they're making. Once they approve their proposal, they have to work according to what they propose. If they want to change their proposal, they have to run that modification by me, and I need to approve it. I'm happy to report that everybody graduated. So they all completed their projects successfully, and they worked according to the work plans that they had created. And you know what? We were really kind of sort of blown away by what they made. Many of them, first of all, chose digital media for their assignment. Not all of them, but they all used in some fashion some kind of digital tools that helped, that certainly helped not only reflect what kind of their upbringing was and kind of what they're comfortable with, but also things that, you know, tools that they'd be called upon to use in the future. They all really tried to outdo one another, not just to find a new idea, but then really to execute their ideas in a way that's really quite impressive. Red's going to show a series of projects through a website that she created, kind of compiling those different projects. But here's just a few of them, a few examples. So first of all, this pair of students here, they were very reluctant to embark on this project. They spent about a week just kind of like kicking a bunch of different tires and not feeling comfortable with any of the possibilities until they hit upon the idea of making a blog. And so they called themselves, in this blog, they called themselves the Bougie Biochemists, and it fit their personality really great. They include lots of photos. They have this bright neon like pink font, and then the language that they use was just like the snarky fun verbiage, which I just found really, really awesome, and they totally draws the reader in. Here's a much different project. This is a pair of students. They were both Lion ambassadors for our campus, and they chose to create a magazine, or like kind of like an extended pamphlet that you might give to a prospective student advertising the biochemistry and molecular biology lab program, specifically the laboratory experiences that a student might undergo to try to like basically sell the program to these incoming students. Here's one more. This example, the students were really, they had some artistic inclinations, and they decided to write and illustrate a it's really a comic book, but we call it a graphic novella. So it's a comic book in which they're taking the techniques that they used throughout the semester. The molecular genetics techniques were used to solve a mystery, so to solve a murder mystery involving their faculty. So they represented each of the Berks BMB faculty as different vegetables. We happened to have in that semester a cloning project where we were cloning genes from a whole bunch of different plants. And so they kind of took that idea and ran with it, and they created this PSU Berks Special Veggies Unit whodunit mystery graphic novella. I mean, so really, you know, from an instructor standpoint, I was really excited to see all of the groups take advantage of this space. Like you know, we give them a few guidelines, but not much prescription. And then they just ran with it, and you know, they built their own projects, and we're really quite proud of it. Red's now I'm going to turn it over to Red. She's going to offer her perspective on the project as she oversaw this effort as an instructional designer. So we're going to turn it over to Red to get her perspective on this project.
Thank you, Brian. So we are Penn State Berks. The Berks Center for Learning and Teaching provides all faculty members teaching and learning innovation grant. This is a non-monetary grant by which we work with faculty members to design, develop, implement, and assess creative and effective instructional solutions within their identified area of focus. The grant is a partnership program. We help instructors in identifying instructional strategies and implementing instructional technologies which will align with course learning goals and objectives. Additionally, we help instructors in identifying and implementing assessment methods to determine the effectiveness of their projects. So Brian Wang submitted his proposal last year, and I got the opportunity to work with Brian on this amazing project. Next slide, please. So there were 4 course goals initially for this grant project. We added the 5th goal: gain independence in planning, creating, and evaluating your own work and learning experiences. This is on the course syllabus for students to review, so they are aware of this course learning goal. So during the process of this final project, we have utilized Ganya's 9 events of instruction, the learning theory. We gain students' attention, inform learners' objectives on Canvas. We provide learning guidance, which is meta assignments, and Dr. Brian Wang will talk about later, the file later. And provide learning guidance and elicit performance, let them practice and assess their performance. Also provide feedback. So this is a screenshot of the Canvas speed grader. Brian Wang review students' proposal carefully and thoroughly, provide actionable and timely feedback just to make sure students are on the right track, and make sure their projects are feasible and help them achieve the learning goals. He also made sure students understand the feedback and are able to apply the feedback into their course, into their final project. So since this is student self-regulated project, most of students have never done this type of projects before. So Brandon shared me a comment during the process. Students have been brainstorming and planning. Many seem enthusiastic about it, and those who are struggling with deciding on an idea are benefiting from the struggle, I think. And I trust, and this is so true. For the assessments, we have created pre and post survey using Likert scale questions, rating students' confidence levels in these 4 areas: planning, creating, and evaluating their own assignment and learning experience, managing a project by setting deadlines and deliverables, and managing the workload, collaborating with a peer to plan and execute a project, thinking creatively and constructing original ideas. So this is a survey result. The 5 levels, Likert scale 5 levels are color coded. So the darker green means they are very high in confidence in these areas, and light green means high. Yellow means medium, low means pink means low, red means very low. So the greener the better. The same questions have been asked in both pre and post surveys. So from the comparison, we can see it's definitely much greener in the post survey data. So the final projects did help students achieve the learning goal. In addition to those questions, we also added some questions in the post survey to gather student feedback on the final project. The students unanimously agreed that the final project helped them achieve learning goals and helped them increase credibility and encourage them think out of the box, prepare them for more independence phase of their education. 90% of the students agreed that the final project increased their interest in the course subject, which is molecular genetics. We also included an open-ended survey question in the post-survey to gather students' overall experience on the final project. Students said that this is a great way to end the semester. I'm more independent. I thoroughly enjoyed doing this final project. At first, I was skeptical, and later on, I enjoy it more than most other projects. Some other students said that I thought overall it was a rewarding project to complete, challenging but satisfying, and more beneficial after the graduation. So the student project senior showcase is definitely the exciting moment. I'm going to share with you a website that we created. I also copy pasted the link to the website in the chat. So student senior showcase, a student product senior showcase is not part of the evaluation, but all the students voted to have this showcase because they were so proud of their projects. They invited their friends and students and faculty members from other classes to the showcase. After the showcase, they submitted their final project for grading. So these 2 young ladies created a blog website. These 2 girls created a graphic short story. We got the question in the Q&A. The students did draw all those graphics themselves. They had that talent. These 2 young men created a Jeopardy game. In the showcase, it was crowded. The audience were like waiting in lines to play the game. A feature article in a magazine, a training module covering lab techniques provided to new employees for a company. This is a cute one. It's a series of emails telling my mom that what I'm doing at school. An online video lecture presentation for a high school course. A series of Facebook posts. A presentation to a group of elementary school children. We also included an open-ended survey just to gather student overall feedback on the showcase. The students said that our hard work really made it all so worthwhile. It was fun to see the audience compete each other in the Jeopardy game. I liked the freedom. The highlights of this entire experience was a showcase, wonderful experience. I loved every moment. Super helpful and fun. See how well we could adjust to the real world where there are people who may not know the science. Here are some photos that we took from the showcase. It's a crowded room, the audience were asking questions, seeing the showcase. This is a picture of the class, the crazier one. This is Dr. Brian Wang, being crazy. Next, I'm going to turn it over back to Brian Wang to talk more about the meta assignment.
Okay, great. Thank you, Red. And I think Red is going to try to chat the link for the showcase website that she just showed. I did see in the chat box that there might have been a problem, but I think she's going to try to chat that. And we're going to kind of enter the last phase of this presentation by showing you kind of nuts and bolts. And I saw that there was something in the Q&A asking about the actual meta assignment or the document. And that's going to be available in Box as well. And Red should be chatting the link for that Box file as well. So we're going to talk about just briefly about the meta assignment itself that was given to the students to help them, kind of guide them through this project. And of course, we start with some learning objectives. These are very loosely defined goals for the project. In the actual meta assignment document that we give to the students, after providing them with an overview and trying to introduce this idea of what they'll be making and doing in this project, then we did even reiterate the goals, those learning goals, in kind of a narrative form, providing them a rationale. And then, we introduced the idea of a proposal as an essential element of the process for getting the students thinking, and then also giving me some control over what they make. The two hard and fast requirements are they need to have a proposal that I approve. So that gives me some control. And then if they change what they're proposing or what they make, they need to work according to what they propose. So they have to follow their proposal. If they change, then I have to approve any modification. So that gives me some bit of control. I did see some questions about grading, which I'm going to address in a few minutes. Really, the proposal is a way of getting them to start thinking about the different aspects of this project. So first of all, what are they going to create? You need to you as a student need to think about, well, what content exactly will you include? In this particular case, it's relatively simple because it has to do with their laboratory work over the semester, but there's many different levels at which you could pitch that content, and that level is going to depend on your audience, your format, kind of the genre you choose and what purpose you have for your project. So we kind of introduced this idea that the different elements of the proposal are interrelated. So they need to also, in addition to examining content, examine the format. And we give them some ideas. We give them suggestions of possible formats, genres, and medias, most of which most students promptly ignore. They want to try to come up with something on their own. They want to get their own novel idea out there. And that's great. We also want them to, kind of think about the interplay between that format and the content, and also the rhetorical situation. So we're asking them to consider and craft a rhetorical situation. It could be real, it could be realish, it could be completely fictional, but we want you to match what it is you're making to some particular rhetorical scenario. Okay, so that's one part of the meta assignment, or this proposal is, what are you going to make? And then we ask them to specifically create a rubric. And so this is we're asking for categories. What are the categories by which your product should be evaluated? So we're, on the one hand, it's a metacognitive exercise where they're trying to determine what does success mean for them within the parameters of this project. And then also this is partly a grading tool. So I'll get to that in a minute. But they're creating a rubric for their own project. And again, I have to approve that rubric. And then they can define that rubric discretely, or they can define it holistically. Third part of this proposal. So there was what do they make? And then how do they want it to be evaluated? And then the third part is, how would you create it? So this work plan, and we're asking for deadlines and deliverables. So again, this has to be approved, but we ask them to set their own deadlines. What drafts are they going to make? When are they going to make them? And then what feedback are they going to get on each of those drafts? So those are the deliverables, and then at the timelines they're setting for themselves, with the ultimate timeline, of course, that they finish the semester and submit the project. So Justin, because I saw a couple of questions about grading, I do grade them according to their rubrics, which I've approved. And I also grade them according to how well they stick to this work plan. So we asked them to submit every draft and every piece of feedback that they get in a final portfolio along with the actual final project or final creation. And then so we evaluate them, or we grade them according to the quality of that final project, according to the parameters of success that they set out in a rubric, as well as how well they stuck to their work plan, so this portfolio. And in this case, it was, it was a relatively small class. It was not, neither of those two things was an issue, really. We didn't set the bar, they set the bar for themselves, and it was all quite high. I'm gonna close by, saying, now you've seen how, you might get students to design their own assignment. We'd like to help you at least consider a couple of things, and maybe they're obvious, but consider a couple of things to help you design your own meta assignment. And so, if you're interested in this type of approach, and again, this is probably just really obvious, but I think of, well, what is it that we're trying to do with this project? So like, to what end would you try to build in more creativity? And of course, what context? An upper division laboratory course is much different than a gen ed course, is much different than a lower, a 100 level course for majors. You may not be able to build in a project like this, depending on the population, the size of the class, and what sort of architecture your classroom has and things. But you can probably think of ways of building in components of this type of strategy, whereby you let the students build something. You guide them, but you also set them free. And we're going to leave, I'm going to leave this slide up for the Q&A. And at this point, we're going to take a peek at the Q&A. At the same time, Red is going to chat, let's see, she's chatted the assignment, and she'll also chat our contact info. I see there's a lot of things going on, so I'm going to, at this point, check out the Q&A, and I know we're getting close to out of time here. So, okay, so I hope I answered about the grading and the rubrics. And then I'm hoping that the links have worked for giving you a copy of the meta assignment. We did, in terms of, there's a question about teams here and how we let them, how we created teams. I've gone back and forth a number of times, and this is kind of a larger question, but in terms of student groups, for this particular set of groups, I let them choose their own teams. It did not need to be their lab partner for that semester, but I think for every group that did come out of making this project, they all chose their lab partner, and then some chose to work alone. I didn't have any issues with regards to group dynamics, which is oftentimes, especially in I guess in any class, but in a smaller class, I see that quite, I've seen that in the past, and that was not an issue. And I'm sure there's, there are pros and cons to both letting students choose their teams and choosing them for them.
Brian, I'd hate to cut in. What we can have you do, if you and Red would like to stick around while we're transitioning to the next, and you can continue to answer questions in the Q&A, and the chat and the Q&A are still available. And I saw that Red posted contact information just so we can get the next session going. But I'd like to thank both of you, Red and Brian, for presenting on this student-created assignments. And
Absolutely.
again, I'm going to launch another poll for trivia, so we give our third group a chance to get ready. So this one is related to Penn State news. And again, Brian and Red will be available on the Q&A to help wrap up. And so here's some Penn State trivia that was just released. Penn State Extension Office recently released a searchable state map to help vendors and legislators find information related to broadband internet, apple orchards, car dealerships, and municipal water programs. And then the second question, a weekly webcast was launched this past Friday by this university group. So we'll give it a minute or so to let everyone respond. And again, thank you to Brian and Red. That was a fantastic presentation. So it looks like we'll give everyone about 5 more seconds to answer if they haven't yet. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And it looks like, so the first question, that the correct answer is broadband internet. So it looks like the majority found that. The second one is actually the Rock Ethics Institute. It looks like it was split equally across a few. So the